Thank you. 1779, John Newton, slave trader. He's out at sea one evening, and he's coming up on deck. He's down below, coming up on deck to replace his shipmate. So he comes up on the deck. He sees his shipmate. He walks towards him. And as he walks towards him, a wave comes, crashes on the ships, grab holds of the shipmate, and pulls him out to sea. It's at that moment that John Newton fell to his knees and prayed and recognized grace. That at that particular moment, it was not his own doing, but it was grace that he was there. And that it was grace that kept him. My name is Reggie Edwards. I'm the son of Ernestine and George Edwards, son of one of 5 children. Grew up in a fairly impoverished setting. My mother was single. I didn't know my father. So a single mom raising 5 kids. My mom had a 6th grade education. I went on, got my bachelor's degree, got my master's, completed my doctorate, was an executive for 15 years, did a couple of fellowships, spent time abroad in Europe. I say that to give context to when we talk about an audacious journey. So it's not a perspective from an observation perspective, but one who has maybe traveled at least a portion of that journey. You may ask, well, what is an audacious journey? It's bringing sovereignty into the lives of low to moderate income people. So what is sovereignty? That sense of freedom that you have in every aspect of your life. Freedom to walk down the street, freedom to get a job, freedom to relax, freedom to laugh in every aspect around, up and down in life, to have that sense of freedom. To bring that into the lives of low to moderate income people. So today I want to bring 3 perspectives about that and how we might go about taking on such a journey. So I want to talk about, one is about seeing. That we begin to see each other, not just in the physical, but in depth. That we may have a deeper understanding and perspective as we see each other. And third, we find out kind of what emerges. Where do we go once we see each other and we have this deeper understanding about one another? Then, what is it that we do? Again, bringing sovereignty into the lives of a lot of low to moderate income people. Let's talk about seeing a little bit. 313.9 million people live in America. 313 million. 15% of those live in poverty. 15%. Just like as if a big weight sort of drops. 46.5 million people living in poverty. 1.5 persons out of 10 live in poverty. How do we see that? How do we see? I recall a story by Malcolm X in telling the story about seeing, at least what I grasped from the story. He tells the story of the house Negro and the field Negro. The field Negro is a slave that works in the field. The house Negro is the slave that worked on the plantation, the big house, as one used to say, the big house. So one day the slave in the field comes to the house, to the plantation house, and speaks to the slave that works in the big house and says to him, let's run away. The house Negro, or the slave that works in the house, says, why? We have it good. Why would we do that? 2 perspectives I take away from Malcolm in this. One is about seeing. The house Negro, or the slave that worked in, failed to see the field Negro. He had aspired and prospered to such a degree that he became distant and no longer seen. And oftentimes in America, as we prosper or perceive ourselves as prospering, we no longer see all of us. And Malcolm was saying that he's forgotten the ability or the notion that they're connected. That their freedom was tied and linked together, much like that 15% that are impoverished. When the 15% are impoverished, we are impoverished. We are connected, seeing. But not only that, he not only did not see the connectedness, he did not see the sovereignty sought by the field Negro. Oftentimes we believe those who are impoverished want a handout or more welfare. Not that they don't, that as if they don't seek sovereignty or aspire to want more. He failed to see that as well. So let's deepen it a little bit. So that's on the surface, 313 million. 15%, 46.5 million on the surface. Okay, we see that. Let's deepen it a little bit. We went out and had some conversations as we've been doing work around bringing sovereignty in the lives of low to moderate income people and talk to people about what is sovereignty and their perspective about life in America. And I recall Mama Hayes, we call her Mama Hayes because it's my partner Bukata here, who's partner in Starving Systems. His mother in Milwaukee speaks of her perspective. She talks about that at some point they were told to buy into and invest into America and that they would get a return. And at some point she said, well, that return has never come. And so what happens when they happen? Well, here's what she says. She in essence said, we need change a different way, a different form, a different structure. Something has to change. Because in essence, she had said, I no longer believe in the previous. So let me deepen it just a little. Because Abraham Maslow teaches us and speaks of that notion or what could happen. So he speaks of 5 steps, 5 needs, a hierarchy of needs. He speaks to this in the context if we want to motivate and progress, there's some basic needs that we have to meet. One is the physiological needs, the notion of food, air, things that we need to sustain. A second would be security and safety. A third may be self-esteem, that I may have confidence and know who I am. That I may rise and eclipse that point where I have self-actualization. The notion that I can be all that I want to be my very best. Is that not what we ask Americans? Is that not what we ask low to moderate income people? To be their very best. Not taking into account those being undergirded by those very fundamental basic needs being met. So that's a piece of understanding. So one, let me backtrack just a little. One, to see the 313, that 15%. That's the first cut. The second cut, before we talk about them doing anything as far as sovereignty is concerned, know that there's some basic needs that have to be fulfilled. So we just don't skip over that understanding. But let me deepen it just a little bit more. Because it's not only that those needs are not there. What happens when you flip the pyramid upside down? That they're no longer, not only are they not met, but they are absent. And people begin to have disbelief. Promises broken. And so that notion of loss of hope, the lack of will to just simply sit down because you don't believe it. There's one thing to simply talk about or to work with somebody who believes and maybe lack of a need. But when somebody not only does not have need, but doesn't believe that anything is to come, that's much different and much deeper and much more challenging for us to bring sovereignty into such lives. So, with that perspective, where do we go? What emerges? How do we go forward? So, let me start off with saying truth. And we all probably heard Einstein's definition of insanity. I changed it a little bit here. But that notion of doing the same thing and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. So we have to start with truth. We see disparities in education. We see disparities in health. We see disparities in income, in every aspect of life, growing disparities. So we know that there's something awry, something's not working. So one, we have to say that it's not, and we seek a new path, a new journey. A couple of kind of insights about maybe what's at the foundation of that journey. One would be that we see and we believe. Another is having relationships, foundational, that we may then have a shared sense of ownership, a shared sense of influence, that we may create something in the collective. So I coach a lot of football. I coach a lot of sports with young people. And one day I had this fourth grader who had quit. He just quit. He said, I'm not doing it anymore. And then he laid on the ground and was kicking his feet. So I'm looking at his parents and looking at him. So, okay, all right, what am I going to do to motivate this young man? So here's the point. The athletes or those players that excel or desire to be there or want to be there, how I motivated them and what I said to them when they were playing or practicing, go, 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 you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. There's not enough go that I could have said with that young man on the ground to motivate him. Here's what I had to do. I had to do this. And I had to say, well, what's wrong, Eli? I had to see him, and he had to see me eye to eye. And we had to connect and have a relationship before I can take on any tactical or strategic strategy about how he would move forward. I couldn't have drawn up another play. Okay, let's do the reverse. As if that would get him up. There's not a play that we can do. And oftentimes when we think about low and moderate income people, we think about strategies and tactics that we can, from an observation perspective, go in and swoop in and raise them up. That relationship is foundational. That must be so before we go anywhere else. So then we say, what does audacious look like? What is that audacious journey? Well, as you can see here, it's about being real, coming correct, acting in the collective together. So let me just simply say that coming correct. So that's street slang, using neighborhood. What that means is when you come and you step forward, you bring all of who you are. You are authentic in your every being. You bring all of who you are, spirit, mind, soul, to address the issues at hand. There's also a saying that furthers this particular saying in the neighborhood is come correct or don't come at all. The notion is that don't come halfway. If you truly are interested and you're truly committed down in your boots, then come. And that's what we would have to be if we're to bring sovereignty into the lives of low to moderate income people. We cannot come halfway. We come correct. What is the audacious journey? It is also scary. It takes time. We don't know all the answers. We take risk. And that's scary. But we journey nonetheless. So we have to have the will. So we have to be willing to do this with all of us, that 15%. We have to be willing to connect with all of us. But when we do, when we all have that will, then we can create and rise up and help bring sovereignty into the lives of low to moderate income people, that we rise together. Seeing and think in the collective. And I recall the story of Martin in the Drum Major Instinct, in that he said, before we condemn them, let us see that we all have the need to feel important, to surpass others, to achieve distinction. So he was saying that We all want to be somebody. We all want sovereignty. And so to those who were oppressed at the time, he was saying, look into the eyes and from the perspective of the oppressor. He was saying, look from all perspectives. And when we do that, maybe we can see something fundamentally different than what we have. And that's where the opportunity to do something new, to make change, to make a difference exists. When we have that perspective and we look. So think about it. Think about, what if we all had sovereignty in our lives? What if we all really owned the American dream? What if we all had influence? Would things be different? Would things be different? It's in our economic interest. It's in our self-interest. So John Newton, he got up off the deck. He went home and he wrote a song, a little old song called Amazing Grace, that we all have most come to know. Our self-interest, our economic interest, but if for no other reason, knowing that we all have grace. So at a minimum, we can extend it. Mother had a 6th grade education. I talked about my bachelor's degree, master's, finishing up my doctorate. The one degree I'm most proud of is at the age of 65, my mom went back and got her GED. That quest for sovereignty, to be more and to have, and to take hold of life, and in every aspect of her being, she desired that at the age of 65. So just imagine if the 313 million, if that little bitty 46.5 million had that sovereignty, what would our country, what would we be like? What would we produce? How would we behave? How would we be? I think it'd be an amazing place. So imagine that journey. That's an audacious journey. And I ask you to join us in that journey. Thank you.